She hadn't even taken off her coat when the girl in designer heels looked her up and down and laughed. "Did your outfit come from a lost and found?" She said it sweet, like a compliment. Like it wasn't meant to stick. But it did, all the way to Paris. The hallway was loud in the way only high schools can be. Lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking, too many conversations stacked on top of each other. She walked through it all like she was in a different world. Her notebook hugged to her chest, her head just high enough not to flinch. She wore a blazer from a thrift store that she had cinched with an old belt and safety pins. Her skirt was 2 inches longer than the ones in the catalog because she had sewn lace to the hem herself, mismatched earrings, canvas shoes hand-painted with fabric markers. Everything on her body had a story. Everything was built from scraps. And she wore it all like armor. But they didn't see it that way. The white girl, Chloe, of course leaned against her locker like it was a runway. Hair freshly straightened, sweater cuffed just enough to show the bracelet her dad bought her in Milan. She had a voice like sugar laced with something sharp. Every time she spoke, the girls around her leaned in, already smiling. "No offense," Chloe said as the girl walked past, "but you dress like you're in a charity fashion show?" The laugh came on cue. Not mean-spirited enough to get in trouble, just enough to sting, just enough to follow her all the way to homeroom, just enough to stick to the edges of her mind like gum under a desk. She didn't turn around, didn't bite her lip or roll her eyes. She just kept walking, found her seat, opened her sketchbook. Her fingers moved quickly, pencil gliding across paper like it was remembering something her heart already knew. Ruffles, pleats, collar lines, stitches tucked behind layers. Dresses that could move like breath. Shoes made for girls who wanted to be loud without saying a word. She didn't cry. Not then, not later, not when she got home and found the same kind of laughter still echoing in the quiet between her mother's shifts and the fridge buzzing low in the kitchen. She just kept sketching on notebook margins, on the backs of worksheets, on paper napkins during lunch, and the edges of her planner right next to the biology homework she had already finished. They thought she was weird. She knew she was building. Every laugh was a seam, every side eye a pattern. Every time someone looked her up and down like she didn't belong, she added another layer, another line, another reason to keep going. She never once told them what she was planning. She just drew and waited because she knew someday they'd see her name, not on a seating chart, not on a report card, on a label, on a page, on a cover. The same girls who laughed would one day flip that page and freeze. And she'd still be sketching, just from somewhere higher. The applications were always answered the same way. A polite thank you for your submission, followed by a sentence that included words like niche or aesthetic mismatch or simply not a fit at this time. She stopped expecting more after the 5th rejection. They didn't need to say what they meant. She could read between the lines better than most. Too urban, too loud, too much. It always made her laugh, just a little, because her color palette was neutral, her silhouettes were quiet. But the truth was, it was never really about the clothes. It was about the body inside them. The skin wearing them. The story they refused to include in the version of fashion they thought mattered. She sewed until her fingers hurt, bought clearance fabric from warehouse bins and turned it into gowns that looked like they had stepped off a runway. She used her phone's timer to model her own pieces, setting it on stacks of books and leaning it against mugs. Her apartment floor was covered in pins, thread, coffee-stained sketches. And yet, somehow, it felt like church. She posted every design, no filters, no gimmicks, just clean backdrops and the softest lighting her desk lamp could manage. She wrote captions that said nothing about revenge or pain or the girls who used to laugh at her in the hallway, just measurements, materials, quiet confidence. She never tagged the school, never mentioned names. Not even when one of her classmates got an internship with a major house and posted about how hard she had worked for it. Not even when she saw someone from high school wearing a knockoff of one of her old designs without realizing it. She just kept going. The likes trickled in, then tripled, then doubled again. An indie brand reached out about a collab, then a small magazine asked to feature one of her coats. A stylist DM'd her about pulling pieces for a photo shoot. She said yes to all of it, calmly, politely, with the kind of grace that doesn't need to shout. Her email inbox started to fill. Her followers grew past 10,000, then 20. but no one from school noticed. No one reached out. No one apologized. She didn't remind them. Not when her designs were worn on a red carpet by a woman whose voice filled stadiums. Not when one of her sketches was reposted by a Vogue editor. Not when her jackets sold out in under 2 hours. She let them forget her because she knew they would remember eventually. And by then, she wouldn't need to explain who she was. She would just let her work do it for her. The outsider label they once gave her had never really fit, but she had kept it anyway and sewn it into every hem. It was one photo, shot in her living room, lit by the late sun slanting through her blinds. She wore a blazer she had designed from scratch pieced together with scraps of brushed wool and satin she had hoarded for months. She paired it with wide-legged trousers she had sewn in the quiet between midnight and morning. Her face was bare, her hair in soft braids pulled into a low knot. The caption said only, "Thread by thread." The brand wasn't huge, just a cult favorite among stylists who loved fashion that wasn't afraid to say something. They reposted it on a Tuesday. She didn't even know until she opened her phone after dinner and saw the notifications rolling like waves. Mentions, comments, tags from accounts she had admired but never dared message. It felt unreal until the DM started. "Where can I buy this? Do you do commissions? Who made this jacket? Can we talk?" By the weekend, a campaign deal was in her inbox. Small budget, but real. Her designs, her models, her city. She signed without blinking. Then came the billboard. She stood across the street from it for 20 minutes, watching traffic blur past as her image, her body, her hands, her thread stood 10 feet tall in a place where she once couldn't afford to shop. She didn't cry. She didn't take a selfie. She just stood there, staring until the sky turned gray. Her account crossed 100,000 followers within a month. A stylist tagged her in a behind-the-scenes photo for a music video. An actress was seen wearing one of her coats at a film festival. She didn't pitch. They came to her, quietly, respectfully, because by now, they knew. The comments shifted too. They were no longer asking where she bought her outfits. They were saying things like, "I need this energy," or "You built this from dust," or "You're the moment and the movement." She didn't brag. She didn't post photos of her workspace even when people begged to see it. She didn't share the story of the hallway or the girl with the cruel smile or the lunch table she sat at alone. It wasn't bitterness. It was discipline. She understood now that the best revenge was not transformation, it was revelation, letting the world see what had been there all along. Her name began to appear in articles, lists, whispers. Designers mentioned her on panels. Stylists credited her. Editors invited her to speak. She declined most of it, not out of arrogance, out of focus. Her walk changed, straighter spine, slower pace, no more rushing to prove she belonged. She knew she did. But her voice stayed soft. She didn't need volume. She had reach. The message came on a Thursday. Mid-morning, she was sitting at her sewing table, hands stained with charcoal from sketching out a new bodice silhouette. Her phone buzzed beside a spool of thread, and she picked it up absent-mindedly, expecting a client or her assistant. Instead, it was a name she had not seen in years. Not on her screen, not in her mouth, not in her mind, really, because even memories can be turned down low once you grow past them. "Hey, stranger. Long time, no talk. I'm getting married this fall, and I'd love for you to come. Would be amazing to reconnect. Let me know, and I'll send you the invite. XO Chloe." She stared at the screen, blinking once, twice, then setting it down as if it might catch fire in her hand. She leaned back in her chair and exhaled through her nose, lips pressed together in something between amusement and disbelief. She had to admit, the girl was consistent. Same fake sparkle in the message as she once had in her voice, same rehearsed charm that used to trail behind her like perfume in high school halls. Except now, it came in carefully punctuated texts instead of backhanded compliments. She didn't reply, not right away, not even later. Instead, she closed the sketchbook on her table, wiped her hands clean, and opened the latest PDF proof of a spread she was finalizing for a major editorial, her cover story. Not a feature, not a side column, the cover, her face, her words, her designs, her name in bold font above the title. The photos were shot in black and white, her clothing lit like sculpture. The interview was raw, Elegant, focused, she had written every word herself. She thought about Chloe's voice. That hallway all those years ago, the joke about charity fashion, the laughter that followed it. How she had kept walking, head down, sketchbook tight to her chest like a shield. And then she looked at her own reflection now, caught in the dark edge of the tablet screen. A woman, not a girl. A name, not a label. A story, not a side note. She smiled. She didn't need to go to the wedding. She didn't need to toast to a life built on curated captions and coastal filter presets. She didn't need to shake hands with people who still whispered in pretty tones. She didn't need to wear a gown in a room that once told her dresses didn't belong. She only needed one thing. She called her assistant. "When the Vogue copies come in," she said calmly, "set one aside for a private delivery." She gave the address, still burned in her memory from the time she had Googled it after hearing about the engagement. No card, no note, just the issue, just the cover, just her, draped in silk she had stitched herself, smiling like she knew what was coming. Because she did. And now, so would Chloe. It arrived 2 days before the wedding. Not with flowers, not with a gift tag, no signature, no message, just a perfectly wrapped parcel in soft black paper with a single gold sticker sealing it shut. The name on the shipping label was correct, no misspellings, no room for confusion. It was delivered to Chloe's mother's home, where the bride-to-be had been preparing for her big day with a rotating cast of bridesmaids and mimosas. Chloe unwrapped it casually, assuming it was from the registry, or from one of the distant cousins who hadn't RSVP'd in time. Her nails were already done, a pale pink French tip. She peeled back the paper carefully so she wouldn't chip them. Then she froze. It was Vogue, the September issue. And on the cover, staring back at her through layers of soft-focus lighting and Parisian styling, was the girl she used to laugh at in high school, the one she called quirky, the one she said dressed like she dug through bins, the one whose name she hadn't spoken aloud in nearly 6 years. Until now, because it was printed across the cover in silver foil, full name, all caps. No question who she was anymore. She looked radiant, powerful, not smiling, but serene, her body wrapped in a floor-length gown of her own creation, textured silk catching the light like water, her hair sculpted like a crown. The headline above her name read, "The future of fashion is already here." Inside the magazine was a 10-page spread, each photo a masterclass in control and vision, models in alleyways, rooftops, museums, no cliches, just fabric and form and purpose. The final page was a portrait of the designer herself, standing at the edge of the Seine, arms crossed, gaze steady, dress billowing in the wind like it had somewhere to be before the world caught up. Chloe sat down. The bridesmaids asked what it was. She said nothing. She flipped through the pages again and again, trying to find some flaw, some typo, some misspelling in the caption or awkward angle in the photograph. But there was none. It was perfect. Not because it was polished, because it was complete. It was the kind of work that came from years of silence and not needing approval. Later that night, Chloe set the magazine down on her vanity. The reflection in the mirror behind it showed her in a lace robe, her face bare, and a tightness in her throat she could not quite name. Somewhere across the ocean, the girl she mocked had walked into a gallery opening the same evening. People asked for photos. Editors hugged her. Stylists cried when they saw the dresses in person. She said little, just smiled. Not widely, just enough to make them wonder. She never told anyone she sent the copy. She never needed to. Because she knew what it meant when Chloe opened that package and saw her name where it always belonged. On the cover, not the guest list. The rehearsal dinner was held in a converted barn strung with soft golden lights, long tables dressed in eucalyptus and candles. Laughter filled the room like perfume, hovering over wine glasses and clinking forks. Chloe wore white, of course. Not the wedding dress yet, but something close. Something expensive. Something that whispered, attention. The bridesmaids circled her like a satellite, taking photos between courses, adjusting place cards, toasting her every few minutes just for the excuse to stand and say her name. It was the kind of event that had been planned for months, color-coded on spreadsheets, built for the perfect Instagram carousel. Someone passed her a wrapped parcel during dessert. It had arrived that afternoon, and the hotel concierge had rushed it over with an envelope marked urgent. She opened it between courses, lipstick fresh, champagne half full. There was no card. No return address. Just the magazine. Her face shifted as soon as she saw it, a pause that made the table quiet for the first time all night. She ran her fingers over the cover like she was checking if it was real. She didn't need to flip it open to know what was inside. She had seen enough, but she did. She turned page after page slowly, her expression unreadable. One of the bridesmaids leaned over her shoulder, gasped softly, and mouthed the name. Another leaned in to see, then another. Then someone across the table pulled up the digital version on their phone, and it spread like a secret you couldn't contain. By the time dessert was cleared, the magazine had been passed around half the room. No one said it aloud, but they knew. Some of them had been there in high school. Some had laughed too. Maybe not loudly, maybe not directly, but they had heard the jokes. They had smiled along. They had walked past her in the hallway without stopping. Now they turned the pages with careful fingers, pretending to be impressed, but each word landed heavy. The bride didn't say a word. She closed the magazine gently and set it beside her glass, face down. Far away, in a small loft with thread still scattered across the floor, the girl they used to mock stood barefoot in front of a dress form. Her hands moved instinctively, pinning fabric along a waist seam, reshaping the silhouette. Music played softly behind her. Her phone buzzed on the table, full of tag stories and DM screenshots of people flipping pages under candlelight. She didn't post anything. Not even a repost. She didn't need to. She had never said their names, never clapped back, never demanded space. She had just kept creating, building, stitching herself into a world that once told her no. Now that world was watching. Not because she chased it, but because she became the standard, quietly, without asking, just by showing them what elegance really looks like when it outgrows the room.